Hey,
Hello, I'm Jaiden, intern at BConnected, and this is Three.
hello, hello. I'm Three. I'm the founder and president of BConnected Colorado. Glad to be here with Jaden. Do you like Jay or Jaden?
Either or.
Okay.
J is usually what people end up defaulting to. Today
Okay.
we're doing a little interview on mixed orientation relationships, and I wanted to start by asking if you could tell us a little bit about your relationship and how you each identify.
Yeah. So, I've been married for almost 20 years and I'm married to a man. He is straight. I identified as straight when we first got together. I'm 48, what I didn't really know about things like being bi back in the late 90s. But I came out 10 years ago. So by that time, we're married, we have kids, and I'm lucky enough that we hung in there as a couple. It's super sad. A lot of people don't, but I am bi. My husband is straight. We are married
Perfect. And did those identities come into conversation early on, or was that something that was brought up later in the relationship?
later for sure. Like, I think I thought that maybe if you have bi thoughts, that means you have a three-way, or it's just kind of some fantasy or some like illicit, like, oh, that's a naughty thought. So no, we didn't talk about any of that when we first got together. And we talked right after we got married, we talked about having an open marriage. And at that, and then 5 minutes later, I was pregnant and then pregnant again. So that conversation kind of closed down because we were having babies, blah, blah, blah. And then 9 or 10 years into our marriage, we said, oh, let's come back to that. Let's open up our marriage. And that is the point, that because I had the permission to get out and about, explore my sexuality more than when I was younger, I realized, oh, duh, I'm so bi. And that's when I came out.
And when that happened, or I guess when that happened, and I guess even now, have other people made assumptions about your relationship because of your differing orientation statuses?
Sure, for sure. People, if it comes up in conversation that I'm bi, people automatically like, oh, is your husband bi too? I'm like, no. Yeah, that's fine. I mean, we I would rather people assume that everybody is bi than assume straight. So, um, but people will assume he's bi. And then this thing that happens is kind of funny. Right now, I, well, I think I'm presenting a little straight. I don't know. Like I just kind of look a little femme these days. But if my hair is super short and I'm looking kind of butch, and we're like out to lunch, something very funny happens. We are acting very married. Like we're either talking about our kids, we're either not talking. I'm correcting his order, like, oh, he doesn't want, no, he doesn't want that. You know, or I'm, we seem very married, but I look gay, he looks straight. And so the server will come and at the end of the meal be like, oh, separate checks. Just like, because they assume that I'm like his lesbian buddy. So that happens a lot. And I'm like, the natural assumption should be that I'm bi. Like I clearly don't look straight, but we're just, nobody's tuned in to bi people. So they assume that we are not married and that I am lesbian and we're splitting the checks. So,
Um, and
which that alone is like enough for a few jokes, like, but
oh,
so
yes.
yeah, people assume all kinds of things.
And then those assumptions that they make, have you ever felt like that has affected you at all, or in what ways, or has that changed over kind of the course of your relationship from when you guys opened your relationship up, you came out, and then
In
to
the
now?
in the beginning, I was very concerned about looking queer enough, for
Hmm.
sure. And I would even argue that thought still crosses my mind, of do I look queer? Am I representing? I don't want to be invisible. And then in my brain, I think, what if you're allowed to just look how you look? I definitely wanted to represent the first few years after coming out. I cut my hair super short, would dress in a button up. Um, so yeah, I would put myself under this pressure of wanting to be seen, you know.
And besides appearance, would you say that like your relationship changed any aspects of how you thought about your own identity?
It's a huge shift to come out as a coupled person, like in an established relationship. We were married, we're married. Um, a lot came up, like i- in terms of like we struggled with kind of like he would feel like, where do I fit in your
Mhm.
new queer identity? Which I would kind of argue every relationship, if long term, goes through some kind of identity shift. You become a parent, maybe you lose a job, maybe you get a job, maybe all kinds of people change in all kinds of ways that causes this ripple. And then you adjust to, what does that mean now for us? Uh,
Mhm.
did that answer your question, or did I go on a tangent?
No, no, I think that's good. And I that works perfectly into to what do you wish more people understood about mixed sexual orientation relationships and like that identity shift that it's more than just kind of like the public facing image. There's a lot more that goes on behind the scenes as kind of you've hinted at.
I think the first thing I wish is that more mixed orientation couples were just, there was more representation. We saw them more, heard from them more. The bi person tends to sort of blend in. The straight person can start to feel really insecure and really threatened by, how are people perceiving me? How are people perceiving our relationship? What kind of judgments are they making on us? Are they looking at me as some kind of cuckold, kept man? Or, you know, those are some of the big things that come up. I've noticed when people, if the queer person starts to shift the way they represent, like their clothes or their look or their hair, that causes some tension. So what I wish people understood is it's a shift in identity, just like any other shift in identity. When you become a mother, when you get a new job, maybe you worked and then you didn't work, or vice versa. Maybe you get sick, maybe, things, our identity changes all the time. But we put a ton of weight on if your sexual orientation, if you decide to kind of be more public about that.
Hmm.
Decide to say, I'm going to own this, I'm going to present this, I'm going to, make it so people know this, then, I almost wish people wouldn't assign so much like hugeness to it. Does that
Hmm.
make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Because there's
Uh,
lots of bi people that come out married that also choose to be monogamous, but they just
yeah.
want to they just want to like, hey, I just want to express this part of myself, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe I want to paint my toenails if I'm a guy, or if maybe they want to kind of tinker a little bit with their presentation, or just have it be known instead of a secret, instead of private, instead of, I don't talk about that. So, in one hand, I want more representation, and at the same time, I want, yeah, but don't make it such a big deal, you know?
And I guess in that sense too, with that contradiction, it's hard to say whether or not there is representation enough in discourse, either through media or through conversations like by the LGBTQ community about bi couples or mixed orientation relationships. Do you feel similarly in that sense to that split feeling of feeling like yes and no, or do you feel like there needs to be more done in terms of having these conversations be talked about more in mainstream media?
Right, because anytime you see a non-monogamous or even bi character, they're usually very exaggerated. They're usually a mess. They're usually, what was that? The Tiger people? I forgot the name of that show. They're all like, they're like, because people like me don't get a show because it's going to be too boring.
Yes.
I'm not throwing champagne glasses with mascara streaming down my face. And I want people to know about my girlfriend. I also want it to be just like anything else. Like, I want it to be like, well, I want you to know so that I can gossip at work about some relationship issues we're having. Like, not necessarily like, bye, poly pride. Just like, I just want to be open about my life.
Yeah. Um,
Like I want
and then
people to ask me the boring questions you would
yes,
ask a straight person or a gay person. Like, oh, how'd you guys meet? Da, da,
yes.
da. What are your plans for Christmas? I want to be able to just have the normal, boring, gossipy conversations about my relationships. Don't tell
And
any of my partners I said that.
instead of it being so just like separate and
Or people
stigmatized.
being like, whoa, how does that work? Like,
Yep.
I'm pretty good at this point at gauging because people will come at you and you can tell. If people are just genuinely curious, like, whoa, I've never met someone like you. I kind of want to learn more. I'm open all day to that. But then there's kind of three responses. There's that of like, oh, interesting, I want to learn more. Sure. Then there's the almost like fetishization is too strong of a word, but like where they're just like, I want that, but I want to learn it all. Teach me how to do that. And like, yeah, beat it. You figure out your own life, you know?
Yeah.
And then the third is the like if people come along and want to challenge you and want you to defend your relationship, which in the early years I would fall into that and start to be like, well, no, here's how it works. Now I like, well, I don't get that very often now, but you can tell the difference usually in like this conversation of defend yourself to me. No, I'm not even going to engage. And when people are like, oh, I'm interested in this and I want to learn all about your marriage and so that I can do that with my marriage. Oi, go, buy the book. I don't know, but then just kind of like, oh, I want to learn more about you. Sure.
Do you
So
think that these dynamics change drastically in terms of age? Like whether it be the people asking the questions or the couples be older or younger?
I think I have more grounded certainty when I talk about myself and my relationships now, and I think that gets reflected back to me. So I
Yeah.
don't have that kind of inner defensiveness of like, oh, let me show you why I'm okay. I don't do that.
Hmm.
Um, One thing that happens if a couple of any stripe, if they are having tension within their own relationship, and suddenly it comes out, oh, well, I'm have an open marriage. You you will they will they're so triggered by that, or if they've had like cheating or something.
Hmm.
And then supposedly we're the like hipster poly people, which I don't monogamous, whatever. It's all each comes with its own bag, but that tension will come through. And people like I've had people where somehow it just came up and I mentioned, oh, my girlfriend. And then, I said, oh, I have an open relationship. And she like covered, her hands went on her chest and she like took a step back. She was so triggered. I was like trying to reel in, like, hey, I'm not causing trouble, but so I knew like, oh yeah, she's having trouble in her partnership. And the reality of an open relationship is like the last thing she wants to hear. Um, so that happens at any age. I've had people tell me I only let my husband have female friends if they're lesbian and not as hot as me. It took all my willpower to go, damn, two for two. Okay, I guess we're out. But I didn't do it. So, um, but so people's own triggers will just sort of come to the surface when you come out as either bi or as poly. It's always a tell if they're like, yeah, you seem not straight, but you haven't come to terms with that. So, um, the younger, the kids these days, they're way more familiar. So, I'll tell people I'm bi, poly, all the things, and they're like, yeah, pass the salt, lady. They're just like, whatever, which is great. It's,
Yeah.
you know, things have changed for the better in the last 5 years, last 10 years. I mean, it was like a big deal when I come out as bi to people, they stare blankly at me. When I come out as poly, that's like when things get spicy.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then kind of just to wrap up our conversation here, is there anything about your relationship story, about non-monogamy, about any of these things that we've talked about that I haven't brought up that you think are important?
I think it's important for people that are coming out within a relationship. I want marriages to hang in there. It makes me really sad that like the bi person comes out and the marriage blows up. Um, I want people to try to give it the old college try of the bi person needs to tap the brakes a little bit. You know, I've met in 10 years of running BConnected, I've met bi people that are like, yeah, I came out, my husband was cool, I opened up our marriage, this is Jennifer, everything's fine. Oops, we're divorced 3 months later. Like they just go way too fast. Uh,
Yeah.
Especially if one of the partners is like, okay, yeah, all right, yeah, uh-huh. And then they just blaze and then everything crumbles. And but I want the straight person to also do the work of like, hey, you can still have be you and you can still be you in this relationship and you can still keep the partnership together. And like I want more tools for partnered people where one person is coming out. I
Hmm.
don't have a lot. I'm going to make a loaded statement, so brace for impact. I don't
Yes.
trust most therapists if they don't have experience with being bi, being poly, that they just kind of like, this is like uncharted territory. But it is absolutely possible for mixed orientation relationships, whether they're monogamous or poly or open, they're both possible. And, you know, I guess I'm a romantic. I want people to, you know, hang in there and not let this one issue blow up an otherwise good partnership. I
Yeah.
know that's a little, it's, you know, I'm not naive. I know that it's easier said than done, but, you know, we had to cut each other slack for, I would say 5 years. You know, I will own, I was super messy the 5 years. I was an adolescent again, which I champion second or third adolescence in a lifetime because it means you're going through this like whole growth phase. You know, you're busting out of, you're like, I'm not gonna just I'm gonna like go through a growth phase again, and it's gonna be awkward. I'm gonna walk a little wonky a little bit, and I'm gonna be super focused on myself and my identity, and that's gonna be a little weird for a little bit. When I was dating, I would bring just endless drama home. When I first started dating women, female bodied people, it triggered all kinds of healing work I hadn't done. I was messy, 100%. My husband, you know, didn't use my chosen name for 5 years. And we hung in there and I'm proud of us, you know, even though we weren't perfect, but we allowed each other space to kind of go through that and then came around. Yeah, marriage is the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not like coming out is there's all kinds of nonsense that comes up in marriage. This is just one of them.
It's just one of the things. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So you got to cut each other slack. You got to cut yourself slack. You got to cut your partner slack and give, you know, actually apply yourself to like, hey, I think can this umbrella become a little more spacious and hold both of us under it? And I hope the answer more often than not is yes. I do think, you know, I think we should have partnerships and marriage. And on one hand, I'm traditional. On the other hand, I'm like, yes, poly, queer, utopia. I want that too. Uh,
Yeah.
it's going to take a minute for us to get there. You know, people are good at being bad at relationships, whether there's one or multiple. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
It does. It does.
those are my thoughts on bi, queer, poly marriage today. You know, we're just as boring
Amazing.
as the last couple when it comes down to it. You know, we're fighting over what to watch at night.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Three, for all of your input. I've appreciated
Yeah,
talking with you today, and I can't wait to do it again.
let's do it again. All right, thanks, Jay.